Season OG proved many things to Epic, primarily that key jangling is extremely effective, but more importantly that there is a large community of players who are more interested in the game's older content. Naturally, since then, Epic has made immense efforts to milk that time period for everything that it's worth, with modes like Reload, as well as Chapter 2 Remix, and now, a permanent Chapter 1 mode.
Every time Fortnite starts dying again, Epic pulls the OG card, because they are lazy. Like what the fuck, Epic?
Now, despite my excitement for Chapter 1 returning again, I have a few reservations. And because I'm an ungrateful Fortnite player who loves hating on the game, I figured I would present some of the concerns I have for this Chapter 1 mode, as well as how I believe it can work. From the information we have so far about the mode, we know that it will start with Chapter 1 Season 1, and cycle through each season a month at a time with OG loot pools. I'm sure many of you have already spotted some potential issues with this model, and it primarily has to do with the season selection. While I would consider Chapter 1 as a whole to be one of the best time periods for the game, the unfortunate truth is that the early seasons were rather lacking, and don't appeal that heavily to the modern day format for content. The standard for change during Chapter 1 Season 1 to about Season 3 wasn't that high, and considering Battle Royale had launched in a rather buggy and unfinished state, most of the early updates were dedicated to polishing the game. Yes, at the time we had weekly updates, which set the game apart significantly when compared to other titles, but the content that was added served to fill in vacancies within an incomplete loot pool. Given that there was no standard previously set for what a Fortnite season could look like since Season 1 was the first, having immense communication and support on the development end was enough to hold over players' interest in the game. However, in modern Fortnite, the standard of content is less focused on the quality of life end of the game, like seen with the early seasons, and more oriented towards themed seasonal changes. I think even at the time, Epic Games understood that these first two seasons were more or less a beta experience for what was to come. This is very evident through the fact that the first season to feature a full Tier 100 Battle Pass was Chapter 1 Season 3. In addition, Season 3 was the first to feature a map that was closer to the number of locations for a chapter's first season, and had by far the least buggy gameplay with the most balanced loot pool. The idea that I'm trying to get across here is that Seasons 1 and 2 don't have much content to work with when compared to the rest of the chapter. So unless their plan is to regress the game through reverting quality of life changes during those seasons,
come join us.
Oh, okay.
it could present some difficulties with keeping players interested early on. Now, as it happens, I do have some potential solutions that could make the first few months of this OG mode a bit more interesting. Season 1 specifically has a lot of potential surrounding items that haven't been in the game at any point past that season. These items include the original SMG, the Zapatron, the Zapper Trap, and the Directional Bounce Pad. Despite being old weapons and items that appeal to the nostalgia of the mode, they also can act as new content for those who didn't get the opportunity to experience it. Yes, I understand that the Zapatron was only in the game for a few hours, but I don't see any reason why it can't come back for Season 1 specifically, considering it was in the game and could give a boost to a season that was rather lifeless. When it comes to Season 2, I don't really have a great solution other than the re-addition of weapons that were implemented during that season. Yes, Season 2 did have the mid-season map changes, with the introduction of Tilted alongside a myriad of other locations, but the problem is this kind of deals a blow to Season 3 as, apart from lucky landings, there weren't many massive changes other than some weapon additions. Honestly, if I had it my way, I would skip Season 2 entirely, because Season 3 is more or less just an extension of that season with a slightly different map and loot pool. Something unexpected that was announced to return for the permanent Chapter 1 mode was the double pump.
Oh, two pumps! In case the first one missed, right? In case you can't hit me for 80, right? In case you can suck a fucking
While I personally enjoyed the double pump meta, it wasn't exactly balanced, and reintroducing this exploit into the game somewhat informs the approach they are going to take for this OG recreation. It seems they are interested in being more faithful this time around to how Chapter 1 actually played.
That is a fair and balanced strategy.
While Season OG was great, many aspects of it, for better or worse, didn't mirror what that time period was actually like. My concern is that they are too focused on making it exactly how it was instead of mainly retaining a faithful experience when and where it makes sense. As it stands, there are going to be details that will have to be inaccurate if they want zero builds to be a fluid experience. For example, every season will likely have the grappler, shockwaves, and other zero build utility, as well as the new movement mechanics. I'm not against this, as it wouldn't make sense to be completely faithful to the mode if it directly conflicts with something like zero build being playable. Honestly, I'm not sure how broken a double pump meta like this would be, given the modern day skill level, but if they're willing to reintroduce a mechanic that they spent 4 seasons trying to patch, what other broken changes are they going to bring back? A great example of this is Season 5. I know people don't really like to admit it, but Chapter 1 Season 5 wasn't all that great. Most of the community shit on it at the time due to its obnoxious piss-ridden spray meta. The easy fix that I was referring to when it comes to not being faithful is simply ensuring that the P90 is a balanced weapon. This isn't to say that you can't have certain weapons that feature altered statistics throughout the different seasons to shift up the meta a bit, but they shouldn't be as powerful as they once were. And honestly, this same balancing really should be applied to pretty much every season. People remember these seasons fondly despite their flaws, so why not improve the parts that didn't work to retain that positive perception that many carry? The nice thing about Chapter 1's issues is that they're not deep-rooted flaws with the seasons as a whole. All of these seasons had interesting themes with mostly great execution, and really only fell flat due to brain-dead balancing or a poor quality of life state for the game, not because the idea of the season as a whole was fundamentally abysmal. Look, I promised I would stop, and I really wanted to, but I just can't let it go. There is no good reason that some of these weapons, items, or vehicles should be exactly how they were. Well, except for one detail that was needlessly left out of Season OG, the weapon models. For the permanent Chapter 1 mode, it has been pretty much all but confirmed that the weapon models will return, and this can achieve a few main things apart from the obvious key jangling. It can allow for different versions of these weapons to function more accurately to how they did in Chapter 1, without altering the current ones, effectively giving the Chapter 1 mode something completely unique when compared to Reload, for example. But this would also just be a useful tool for combat-based creative maps to have a larger variety of weapons to play around with. A great iteration of this would be the pump shotgun. They could create a separate weapon ID for the pump, like the Legacy pump shotgun or OG pump shotgun, and give it statistics that more accurately represent what made that weapon appreciable during Chapter 1. You might say this conflicts with the idea of keeping primarily balanced weapons in the game, and to that I say some of these weapons actually were just more balanced. It's difficult to argue that the cookie cutter Chapter 3 reworked version of the pump takes more skill than the one that primarily rewarded hefty damage when you were hitting max shells to the head. I'm not even really against the way the current pump functions, but if I had to pick between the two, it would definitely be the one that can actually one pump. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that the weapons need to be more than just a different skin for the existing ones. They should feature different statistics that are appropriately balanced and match how those weapons functioned in Chapter 1. As a whole, the OG mode has quite a bit of potential, as well as some fairly easy fixes they can implement to ensure that it's a more enjoyable experience. While something like double pumping could present some problems, it shows that they understand the target demographic for the mode quite well. So why are so many people saying that this mode will ruin Fortnite? The main arguments I've heard against the permanent Chapter 1 mode are the potential abandonment of Chapter 6, the pulling of resources from the main Battle Royale for another mode, and the idea that the game is stuck in the past and refuses to innovate. Now, I actually would agree with some of the concerns if the Chapter 1 mode were taking the place of the main BR, but it isn't. Something I feel a lot of people are forgetting is that Chapter 1 returning again is meant to be its own thing that fits into a large catalog of modes developed for their own audiences, and in no way does that detract from the main BR, let alone will it ever lead to the potential abandonment of it. Sure, when OG releases, it likely will have more players than Chapter 6, but eventually the people who came for the novelty of the mode will move on. Yes, there will still be a large audience of returning or consistent players who just want to play Chapter 1, but it's unlikely that the mode will ever be Epic's primary focus. The main BR is a testbed for the Unreal Engine to experiment with all kinds of new features, aesthetics, and play patterns for the game. Despite my jab at Fortnite Wrecked, it couldn't exist without modern Fortnite's innovation standard, and Chapter 6 will likely approach the game in a similar manner and improve upon it. I have come up with countless reasons as to why I believe older chapters were objectively better, but despite this, the main BR can't simply return to those simplistic aesthetics and play patterns, because the modern aesthetics and play patterns are a better billboard for promotion than something like Chapter 1 ever will be. And in terms of pulling resources from the main BR, this has always been such a boogeyman argument in my opinion. Over a year ago, Donald Mustard retired, and it was revealed that the reason he left was due to his resources for the storyline being pulled to work on the metaverse. Ever since then, everyone points to this as the event that dragged down the modern era of the game. Anytime Epic doesn't deliver on something, people will either use this as a defense card for the game's quote-unquote lack of content, or it's used as an attack against the metaverse or its branching modes, like seen here. The problem is you as a player have absolutely no idea how much this switch in creative directors is even affecting the current game. Like, I have no doubt that it was quite a challenge they had to overcome for a time. But guys, it's been more than a year since he officially left, and before that it was reported that he didn't have much involvement after Chapter 3 Season 3, which was a whole year before he even left. But fine, if we want to pretend that this boogeyman argument holds weight, I still don't see what that changes. Like, are you going to sit here and tell me with a straight face case that the mode that is primarily described as lazy due to it existing completely off of old content requires a lot of resources. And sure, you're right, I don't know how difficult it would be to pull something like this off, but it can't be more tasking than any of the other metaverse modes, especially when you consider that old builds for the game are available through one Google search. The final and likely worst argument is the idea that we don't want the game to be stuck in the past. And again, you understand that this is a separate mode, right? Look, I actually do think there is some valid criticism to be made against this mode's existence. The main negative takeaway from this is that Epic doesn't seem interested in creating a better main BR scene for their older players. With the announcement of this mode, it conveys to me the idea that the BR will forever be a testbed for the Unreal Engine, a build board for collaborations, and a mode without a finite identity. I would much rather see old ideas implemented into future chapters, but this screams we can't do that, so just enjoy chapter 1 or reload, because that's not happening. That's pretty much all I have to say on this topic. I think the OG mode has quite a bit of potential moving forward. It'll be nice to have a chapter 1 recreation that is supported by Epic, that hopefully isn't just a Season OG 2.0. Let me know what you think about chapter 1 returning again down in the comments below. You can support me by subscribing or using creator code MUDGY. Anyways, thank you for watching and have a great day.